Hello again, BookTube. It's Mike, and this is Riff Raff's Reading Renaissance. And today I want to do a tag. It's called the Favorite Quotes tag. I saw it on Book Chat with Pat's channel, but it was originally created by a very new booktuber called Sailing Through Books. She's so new, she's got 175 subscribers and 11 videos. So we need to give her a little bit of love, and maybe if we do, she'll tell us her real name. I saw Pat do the tag. Pat didn't tag me. Pat normally tags everybody, but she didn't tag me. I didn't take it personally because you know the first rule of BookTube, if you don't get tagged and you feel like doing it, just do it. So I'm going to do it. The idea is there's 7 quotes or 7 prompts, each of which ask you to find either quotes or passages from books that are very special to you for whatever reason. So if we dive straight in, the first prompt is a quote that you return to in hard times and why it comforts you. I'm going to reach back to a very important book for anyone who lives in South Africa, and this is of course the autobiography of the late great Nelson Mandela. It's called The Long Walk to Freedom, and contained within this amazing book is one of the most oft quoted passages that Mandela had stated, which was to say, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down but got back up again." I think that's a quote to hang on to in tough times. Thank you, Mr. Mandela. The second tag is quotes that sum up your philosophy of life. That's a broad subject. I'm going to go much more domestic on this. I'm going to look to mom and dad, and in fact my grandmother as well. Let's start with my grandmother. My grandmother was the Durban City librarian, so she takes some of the credit for instilling books into the family DNA. My mother was an English teacher, and between the two of them, they instilled in me a concept that I have labeled lifelong learning, that you never stop learning. That to me is a very important part of my philosophy of life. Not to be outdone, let me give some credit to my dad as well. My dad taught me not to outsource my thinking. He used to say to me, "It's your job. Don't let anyone else do it for you." That's also a part of the philosophy. And then if we go a little bit broader while on the philosophy of life, let's ask Mr. Shakespeare. If I reach back into this, like everyone else, I've got one of these complete works of Shakespeare, but I want to reference Polonius in Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 3, where Polonius says, "To thine own self be true." Some of what Polonius says I like, but I'm not sure about all of it. So let me quote Mr. Polonius. He says, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst then not be false to any man." Now, I want to unpack this a little bit while we're talking about philosophies of life. To thine own self be true, I think is the wisest thing I think I've ever heard, because I have in my many years on the planet learnt that fooling yourself is a very, very foolhardy thing to do. You need to be brutally honest with yourself. I don't necessarily believe that you have to be totally honest about all aspects of yourself with the rest of the world. It's a very intrusive world, particularly now in the age of social media, and I do think we're entitled to reserve some aspects of ourselves and our lives into the realm of privacy. So I don't necessarily agree with the total statement from Polonius that if you're true to yourself, you will always be true to everyone else, but I do think being true to yourself is a fundamental part of my philosophy of life. And while we're looking at, the great books, let's put William Shakespeare aside. And even though I'm not a man of faith, I do, like a lot of people, draw references from the Bible in terms of the wisdom contained therein. And again, if one turns to Matthew 7:13 or Luke 6:31, either of which, in paraphrased form, tell us to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. My paraphrasing of that is simply, be kind. I think that's a very important, very simple, but very important maxim to live your life by. So, lifelong learning, don't outsource your thinking to anybody else, to thine own self be true, and be kind. That sums up my philosophy of life, I think. Not bad. Then turning to the third tag, it says, a quote that you love because it's beautifully written. Here, I'm going to reach back again into the pile and pull out a book called Erotic Vagrancy. This is the biography of Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, which is, as you can see, a massive tome. Not maybe too much detail for some people, but I am an unabashed huge fan of Richard Burton's voice. Some of you on the channel have been very kind to me in complimenting my own voice, but I'm aware that a powerful voice is an extremely useful asset. And I do believe those of you who don't know Richard Burton's voice should really go and check out a sample.
No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space.
I believe his voice to be the single greatest voice that I have experienced during my lifetime, which is saying quite something because I've been around a while. But I wanted to extract from this book the way the author Roger Lewis actually describes Burton's voice, because this truly is beautifully written, if I can read it to you. Burton's voice was certainly one of the 20th century's great noises. Roaring, swelling, delicate and bombastic by turns, the articulation and diction very precise, and it's what I hold most dear, what I find most engaging about him too, the inflections, nuances, elaborations and grain of his voice, the fire and the flint of things spoken. Everything one would want to know with Burton is present in the voice, which was rich and artificial, carrying a sense of fracture and mournfulness. Isn't that something? Okay, tag number 4 is a poem that you've memorized and why you memorized it. I'm going to choose a poem that you guys have not heard before, and I'll tell you afterwards why I can say that with such confidence. It's a poem that describes the beautiful time at the very beginning of the day. And I have to confess, I'm not a morning person. I'm a late night person. But I know people who are morning people, and occasionally I've accompanied them, socially required to do so. And I have to say, there is a moment just as the sun is coming up when the world is at peace and the hustle bustle hasn't started yet. And there's that beautiful contemplative start to a day before the slings and arrows start flying. And this is what this poem tries to capture. It's called Another Day Begins. An orange balloon on the distant horizon. The air has a nip, for the sun was still rising. A delicate fusion of ambery tone brought warmth to the shore where I walked all alone. Another day begins. A crab scuttled awkwardly, shyly away, perhaps the strangest of all nature's rebels. Night shed its cloak with the sounds of the day, the gentle lap of the tide on the pebbles. Another day begins. The gulls on the breeze soaring over my head, like marionettes with invisible thread. The day unfurled like the flags on the mast, spelling a message of sunshine at last. Another day begins. I walked along for miles. The clear blue sky was free, and the smiles shone like pearls on the sea. Another day begins. Far too soon it was time to be leaving. A gull flew ahead of me, bobbing and weaving. It caught my eye with its quizzical stare. Was it my love? Was it she who was there? Another day begins. I climbed the steep path to the high cliff-tops hither. The sea was as clear as a fresh mountain stream. The gull, as it circled away, dropped a feather, a souvenir of a beautiful daydream. Another day begins. Isn't that lovely? The reason I didn't think you'd know the poem is, in fact, it's a lyric. I do this a lot. There's a lot of song lyrics that I believe are good enough to qualify as poetry. I don't agree with those who say song lyrics cannot be poetry. I agree that there's bad lyrics, But I think there's bad poetry, and therefore if there's good lyrics, why should they not enter the realm of good poetry? Anyway, I enter that into evidence, and you can tell me in the comments whether you agree with me that it qualifies for the prompt. Then prompt number 5, a quote that captures your feelings about love. Okay, I'm going to push the boat out here. I want to quote you 3 because I like them all. The first, again, if I reach back for our good friend Mr. William Shakespeare, but I'm picking up this slightly more flimsy tome because this has just got all the sonnets in it, and rather predictably I want to reference sonnet 116, which is one of the best known sonnets of Shakespeare, but I do think it captures very much the feelings of what true love, not fanciful love, but true love actually is. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark, that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star of every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. I think it's hard to get better than that. So kudos to Mr. Shakespeare for the first one. The second one is another literary discovery. A while ago I read Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, which if you haven't read, I would appeal to you to push this up your TBR. It is one of the most beautiful stories that's ever been written. And the line I want to quote from it relating to love and how Tolstoy, who has an incredible skill to capture the inner thoughts of people and the human condition. But the scene is on the railway station where Vronsky first meets Anna. And without any spoilers, he's struck immediately by the stunning Anna. And the line from the book goes as follows. He stepped down, trying not to look at her, as if she were the sun, yet he saw her, like the sun, even without looking. In so few words, Tolstoy captures instantly that feeling of complete infatuation that hits Vronsky between the eyes when he first sees the stunning Anna. It's just a beautiful piece of writing, very typical of Tolstoy. And last but not least, if we go back to the ancient Greeks, it was Aristotle who said, love is composed of a single soul inhabiting 2 bodies. That's pretty hard to beat too. Moving on to quote number 6, a quote that makes you feel seen. Here, I need to reference the fact that I am, as one of the things I do in life, a musician. And the act of creating music is a very important part of who I am. James Baldwin has written a lot of great works. This book I'm referencing here is called Going to Meet the Man, which is his collection of short writings. And in it, there's a short story called Sonny's Blues. And Sonny is a musician, a very troubled musician, but for today's purposes, that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that James Baldwin captures in fantastically beautiful prose the actual act that a musician goes through of creating music from nothing. Let me read this to you. All I know about music is that not many people ever really hear it. And even then, on the rare occasions when something opens within and the music enters, what we mainly hear or hear corroborated are personal, private, vanishing evocations. But the man who creates the music is hearing something else, is dealing with the roar rising from the void and imposing order on it as it hits the air. What is evoked in him then is of another order, more terrible because it has no words. and triumphant too for the same reason. And his triumph, when he triumphs, is ours. As a musician, I think that is just the most sublime description of the act of creating music from nothing. And I chose that as a quote that makes me feel seen, because of course when I'm on a stage producing music, I want to be seen, I want to be heard, and I think Baldwin understands that interface between the void and the music that you generate as you try to control the roar. Prompt number 7. Okay, this gets a bit more serious. It says a quote that you'd want read at your funeral. Again, I turn to one of the lyricists I'm most fond of. If you've seen earlier videos, you might have seen me reference this book. This book's called Silent Singing, and you'll see the man with his finger on his lips there in a monk's cowl. This is Ian Anderson, who is, I think, one of the greatest writers of lyrics. And it's literally about someone who has passed on, talking to the one who has been left behind. It's called At Last Forever. So why are you holding my hand tonight? I'm not intending to go far away. I'm just slipping through to the back room. I'll leave you messages almost every day. And who was I to last forever? I didn't promise to stay the pace. Not in this lifetime, babe, but we'll cling together. Some kind of heaven written in your face. It goes on, but you can see why I like it. And that is the 7 tags. Tag number 8 is to tag others, but as you saw at the beginning, I'm going to take the lazy man's tag, as I call it, which is to say that if you're watching this and you're feeling like doing it, please don't wait for me to tag you. That's not the point. I suspect Sailing Through Books didn't tag me because she's never heard of me. Book Chat with Pat didn't tag me because she's tagged millions of other people. It doesn't matter. The point about BookTube is if you see a tag you like, do it and reference back the people who created it before you so that they can see that their tag is having some legs, and hopefully so they can get to know your channel and you can get to know theirs. So I would say again, if you aren't, I think everybody on BookTube knows Book Chat with Pat. If not, go and rectify that. I doubt very much that you don't know Book Chat with Pat. But if you don't know Sailing Through Books, go and have a look, and let's get those subscriptions up because it's a lovely channel. I am hoping she'll eventually tell us her name, but other than that, it's a fantastic channel. So anyway, thank you very much, BookTube people out there. Thank you for sticking with me through this tag, and I hope you enjoyed it a little bit. If you did, please consider the liking, subscribing, and even the notification bell, which gets me straight to your inbox when I publish something. So thank you very much, and in any event, I'll hope to see you next time. Bye-bye now.